Are you ready for the moment Michael finally admits what and who he really saw the night Drew was shot? Port Charles has always been a lively place. If one enjoys civic institutions run like an over-caffeinated video game and a justice system held together by wishful thinking. At the center of this carnival is Sonny Corinthos, the unofficial owner of nearly every structure with a door, a lock, or an electrical outlet. City Hall, the hospital, the docks, the fire department, the police department, even the airport, allegedly branded with his personal logo. Nothing escapes his shadow. At this point, the only surprise is that citizens don't swipe Sonny cards to pay for utilities or secure police protection. Against this backdrop of institutional absurdity, the show continues parading its cast of characters through increasingly unhinged storylines, all orbiting two key dynamics: the endless catastrophes involving the Corinthos bloodline and the chronic inability of Port Charles adults to act like adults. The children, of course, manage crises with more grace than their parents, an indictment the writers seem blissfully unaware of. Rosco emerges as the latest pint-sized martyr of Port Charles, sacrificing himself with operatic determination to save Danny and Charlotte. Naturally, the moment Dalton drags the child out the door, the two rescued kids immediately erupt into loud bickering. Subtlety has no place here, neither does common sense. But apparently Dalton is as hard of hearing as he is hard of thinking, because the shouting goes unnoticed. Meanwhile, Dalton has made himself another enemy, Britt, who now helms Dalton's workplace while harboring an emotional attachment to Rosco, the birth son he doesn't know she has. Nothing motivates a power-hungry administrator quite like maternal instinct, so Dalton's imminent downfall is practically a foregone conclusion. One might almost feel sorry for him if he weren't written like a bureaucratic Scooby-Doo villain. Soap operas thrive on mystery, but the current Who Shot Drew plot is so inflated and drawn out that it makes Who Shot JR look like Shakespeare. The shadowed shooter wore a trench coat and moved like a woman, or at least like someone cast for plausible deniability. The ambiguity was promising for all of 8 seconds before spiraling into the usual chaos. One theory proposes that Jacinda, former paid escort of Ezra and new object of Michael's affection, played a starring role. Another suggests Willow's dissociative alter ego pulled the trigger, thereby adding one more psychological crisis to her already towering stack. And then there is the deeply inspired possibility that Drew hired Jacinda to shoot him in order to frame Michael, a plan only Drew could concoct, meaning it is simultaneously overwrought, reckless, and doomed. The writers, naturally, can pivot to any culprit at any moment. Continuity is optional in Port Charles, after all. What matters is not the truth, but how many detours the plot can take before landing somewhere that feels inevitable, yet vaguely disappointing. Regardless, Michael stands at the center of the storm, shouting confidently about Willow's guilt while refusing to divulge what he allegedly saw. Subtlety escapes no one here, not even the audience, who can easily infer that Michael witnessed something damning but is shielding the wrong person. The Drew and Willow saga has become an endurance test for viewers. The storyline has reached the point where even the characters seem exhausted by their own choices. Drew's schemes ricochet with predictable disaster, yet Willow follows his advice with the loyalty of someone hypnotized. Their shared habit of creating problems and then marveling at the resulting wreckage is almost impressive in its consistency. Willow's hypocrisy is another recurring theme. She criticized Jacinda's proximity to Wiley, yet had no qualms inserting Drew into her own children's lives against Michael's explicit wishes. Her indignation is loudest when aimed at others, and conveniently muted when the mirror faces her direction. The result is a character who wavers between victimhood and opportunism, neither particularly flattering. Even her scenes with Jacinda expose this double standard. Willow's remark about almost not recognizing Jacinda with so many clothes on lands with the bitterness of someone painfully aware of her own romantic entanglements, particularly given the memory of her own less than fully clothed moments rolling around on a nursery floor with Drew, a detail Jacinda never needed to stoop to in order to earn judgment. The audience has endured Willow's near-death journey, her emotional unravelings, and now her slow descent into a storyline where she may very well be the shooter herself. If she is, blame will no doubt be directed in every direction except her own, Port Charles's signature style of accountability. Medical realism has long been an optional garnish on this show, but the recent incidents reach new heights. Brit's arrival, just as Gino prepares to begin CPR, is framed as heroic intervention rather than fortunate timing. The cardiac wing dedicated to Monica appears to be staffed with invisible doctors, raising questions about the hospital's survival given its reliance on whichever character happens to stroll by. Ned's sudden collapse, Drew's morally questionable decision to walk away, and Gio's last-minute discovery all serve as narrative accelerants. The hospital remains a revolving door of crises, accusations, and miraculous recoveries. Hardly new for Port Charles, but increasingly absurd when held up to any scrutiny whatsoever. Portia, meanwhile, finds herself perpetually jealous, perpetually defensive, and perpetually wrong, especially where Brit is concerned. She knows Brit is right, but clings to indignation as if it were a medical credential. Her professional credibility slides further downhill as other truths surface, including doctored lab results and the inevitable consequences looming over her position. No crisis in Port Charles is complete without Sonny's gravitational pull. Dalton dared to lay a hand on a Corinthos descendant and now finds himself on a collision course with the family patriarch. Sonny's intervention is inevitable. Dante's objections are equally inevitable and equally ineffective. Dante's legendary ability to turn on his own relatives when procedure demands it only exacerbates the tension. Jason, too, continues his role as moral compass and perpetual fixer. His acknowledgement of Ned's sacrifices is a refreshing moment of clarity amidst general nonsense. Brooke Lynn thanks Gio for helping Ned, while Lulu's attempts to show solidarity risk reigniting old rivalries once the truth behind Rocco's troubles surfaces. The entire town, as always, folds into Sonny's orbit, even when the storyline pretends otherwise. Port Charles treats romance like an ongoing clearance sale. Endless choices, constant turnover, very little quality control. Cody and Molly stand as the latest victims of the stop-start storytelling pattern in which characters drift into frame every 2 weeks to share meaningful glances before vanishing again. Their chemistry is there, charming, gentle, surprisingly mature, but the pacing is so fractured that the entire pairing feels like a checklist item that writers keep forgetting to finish. The recurring theme? Momentum is treated as a threat. Just when two characters inch toward a kiss, the narrative yanks them off stage for an extended vacation. Chemistry grows cold, rhythm collapses, and the audience is left piecing together a relationship from fleeting crumbs. Molly's current actress brings warmth and grounded sincerity. Cody, for his part, has the kind of easy charisma that should thrive in a soap environment. Yet their scenes are rationed like wartime sugar. This staggered approach would be manageable if the rest of the show offered more consistency, but instead, viewers watch a parade of half-developed dynamics, romances that almost ignite, friendships that almost deepen, and storylines that almost make sense. In the end, Cody and Molly become symbols of a broader issue. Port Charles is allergic to narrative follow-through. Brit continues her long-standing tradition of swinging between redemption arc and unapologetic villainy, often within the same episode. The town remains divided on whether she is a reforming heroine or the same old mischief maker in better clothes. Her history with Emma provides a helpful reminder. Not all wounds heal with time, and certainly not when fire-damaged dolls and baby-trapping schemes were involved. Emma's disdain, therefore, is not only justified but arguably overdue. Brit's attempts at feigned goodwill in past years left scars, and her recent return has only reinforced that the Britch nickname remains uncomfortably accurate. Fans may cringe at hearing the moniker resurrected, especially from the younger set, but nostalgia has always been Port Charles' favorite defense for questionable writing decisions. Still, Brit's growing rivalry with Portia, her position power struggles, and her moral superiority in the Ned crisis sharpen her character. She remains consistently more competent than half the hospital staff and twice as entertaining. Whether hero or troublemaker, She retains a magnetism few characters can match. Jacinda'S arrival has triggered the kind of speculation usually reserved for conspiracy documentaries. Her past as Ezra's paid companion, her curious blend of vulnerability and mystery, and her uncanny ability to walk into the Corinthos orbit without disintegrating on contact have fueled theories that span the entire range of soap logic. Perhaps she is a reformed Bobby-type figure, the show's latest attempt to polish an imperfect past. Or maybe she is something far more sinister, a sleeper villain, a plant, or even a resurrected identity wrapped in plastic surgery and plot armor. The possibility that she might be Nell reborn, restructured, or re-engineered has been floated with equal parts horror and fascination. And why not? Port Charles thrives on shock value, whether reasonable or outrageous. The far wilder theories suggest she may be wearing someone else's face entirely, as if the show were auditioning for a crossover with its supernatural spin-off of yesteryear. One imagines the writers hunched over corkboards, rearranging timelines with the confidence of people unburdened by logic, yet the simplest explanation persists. Jacinda is exactly who she claims to be, but not nearly as honest as she pretends. Her hesitations, her evasions, the lingering question of who she spent the night with when Drew was shot, all of it suggests half-truths wrapped in good intentions. If she was with Ezra or a mayoral candidate, or another clandestine client, the consequences will be seismic. Michael's alibi stands on legs so shaky they may collapse out of sheer embarrassment. Only in Port Charles can a citywide crime morph into a conversation about spousal privilege with the intensity of a debate over national policy. The idea that Michael should marry Jacinda, not for love, not for stability, but for strategic protection from courtroom questioning, is the kind of plot twist that shows how deeply the Corinthos worldview has infected the town's legal reasoning. One side insists the marriage would shield Jacinda from testifying against Michael. Another counters that her previous statements render such protection moot. Others invoke past examples, conveniently forgetting that Port Charles law is less legal statute and more choose-your-own-adventure. Carly famously married Sonny mid-crisis simply to avoid testifying, establishing the unspoken rule that weddings double as courtroom armor. Yet beneath the debate lies the truth. The trial that matters is Willow's. Michael is merely trapped in the gravitational pull of Drew's paranoia and Willow's unraveling psyche. Jacinda'S alibi is both a tool and a liability. If she lied about her whereabouts, even to spare Michael embarrassment, the fallout will be swift, public, and melodramatic. If she tells the truth, someone powerful suffers. Either way, the writers have arranged the chessboard for maximum chaos. The once beloved schoolteacher turned martyr is now drifting toward a psychological breaking point with such momentum that even the audience demands either a resolution or a brief vacation from her storyline. Her tears, once poignant, now function as punctuation in a plot that refuses to end. Even loyal viewers express fatigue, not with the actress, but with a character lost in a maze of bad decisions, misplaced loyalties, and unraveling sanity. If Willow is the shooter, her dissociated state provides narrative justification, but not emotional relief. Michael's unwavering belief in her eventual imprisonment hints he witnessed something incriminating, yet refuses to divulge it. Drew's righteous indignation lacks self-awareness. His own manipulations of Scout, Alexis, and half the town disqualify him from posing as victim or hero. Willow and Drew have evolved into a pair defined not by romance or loyalty, but by the gravitational pull of their worst instincts. The show insists on dragging their ordeal across months, yet offers no emotional growth or meaningful change. At this point, the storyline resembles a treadmill, constant motion, no forward progress. Port Charles has developed a peculiar habit. Characters vanish into the ether, never to be mentioned again, as though the town itself suffers from episodic amnesia. Taggart, once a central emotional pillar in Trina's life, now resides in an unspecified void. His absence is particularly galling, given that he raised Trina, only for her to speak of Curtis exclusively as her father mere months after a paternity reveal. For a character who was once central, Taggart's erasure is startling. Trina treats his memory like an outdated accessory, no longer fashionable, rarely referenced. The show is determined to establish Curtis as her primary father, logic and history be damned. Even the DNA storyline, initially layered with intrigue, was executed with all the depth of a hasty rewrite. The involvement of Selena Wu hinted at tampering, but the show abandoned every breadcrumb the moment Curtis became the desired outcome. This neglect extends further. TJ disappears for weeks at a time, emerging only to vanish again. Sean is forgotten entirely. The show's treatment of its black characters is inconsistent at best and dismissive at worst, a troubling habit that deserves more scrutiny than it receives. Portia's narrative has become an exercise in déjà vu. She keeps repeating the same mistakes, secrets, lies, deflections, while insisting she has evolved. Her new pregnancy storyline merely recycles the old paternity drama with fresh packaging. Her marriage to Curtis crumbles under the weight of unresolved truth, but she clings to him with the determination of someone who cannot bear facing her own patterns. Her rivalry with Jordan, her defiance, her misplaced blame, and her perpetual defensiveness create a portrait of a woman constantly shocked by consequences she engineered herself. Yet the show expects sympathy, even support, as though viewers have not watched her cycle endlessly through the same emotional terrain. Her daughter, meanwhile, regresses into a strangely infantilized form, an adult woman clinging to the fantasy of keeping her parents together, despite having been raised primarily by Taggart. This revisionist logic strains plausibility, even for Port Charles. No soap operates without the temptation to resurrect characters, but Port Charles treats death as a blinking suggestion. The proposal to recast Faith Rosco, preferably with a glamorous veteran actress, sparked spirited debate. Some argue a powerful female mobster is overdue. Others point out the canvas is already crowded with Ava, Selena, and the ghostly legacy of Claudia. Faith, however, represented something rare. A villain the show actually allowed to remain dead. Her demise had finality, purpose, and emotional impact, qualities that modern GH often avoids. Resurrecting her risks undermining one of the few examples where the show exercised discipline. Yet the nostalgia remains strong. So strong, in fact, that the mere mention of her name conjures wistful recollections of simpler times, when villains terrorized the town, met their fates, and stayed there. There comes a point in every long-running soap when a storyline overstays its welcome, collapses under its own weight, and begins dragging entire characters down with it. Drew's current arc has achieved this distinction with Olympic finesse. The town is exhausted. Viewers are exhausted. Even the characters dragged into his orbit look as though they're staring into the void between takes, praying for writer's amnesty. Drew is now the narrative equivalent of a blue suit that never changes, stiff, constricting, and inescapable. Cameron Matheson plays the villain with good hair trope well, but even he cannot rescue a plot that relies on recycled moral outrage and a never-ending game of blame musical chairs. His vendetta against Michael is relentless, self-righteous, and devoid of nuance, righteous fury without logic or introspection. And then comes the reveal that Drew walked away while Ned was in desperate need of medical assistance. This alone should have detonated the storyline. Instead, it becomes just another item on the Drew accountability wish list, an ongoing document the writers seem determined to ignore. Viewers don't forget these details, even when the show hopes they will. The only saving grace is the ripple effect. It gives Ned material worthy of the Quartermain legacy, inspires Geo to actually matter in a scene, and gives Britt another opportunity to play hero. But ask anyone in Port Charles, on or off screen, and they would trade 10 Drew scenes for a single coherent plot. The legal system in Port Charles behaves less like an institution and more like a performance art collective focused on avant-garde interpretations of justice. Martin Gray is the most recent beneficiary of this legal improv theater. The man faked a will, aided and abetted corruption, and played a central role in a high-stakes family con. Yet he remains free, practicing law, and casually attending social functions. The explanation? A peculiar alliance between Ned and Laura, who apparently decided that facing the mayor's stern disappointment constituted adequate punishment. The Quartermaines accepted this with surprising ease. Tracy, allegedly furious enough to ensure Martin's arrest, simply evaporated from the storyline as if whisked away by an off-screen portal. Perhaps she relocated to Paris out of sheer frustration. The entire subplot underscores Port Charles' pathological aversion to consequences. Crimes are addressed selectively, depending on the day, the culprit, and the writer's caffeine intake. Ronnie, Martin, Sonny, Selena, everyone participates in corruption with the enthusiasm of community theater, yet only minor characters or guest stars ever face true accountability. It's almost poetic, a town full of cops, judges, and commissioners, yet justice remains a mythical creature, rumored but rarely cited. While Port Charles adults debate, deceive, cheat, and implode, the town's children consistently outperform them in basic logic, bravery, and emotional clarity. Rocco's heroic sacrifice, Danny and Charlotte's genuine concern, Emma and Gio's steadfast loyalty, the kids operate with the maturity the adults lost somewhere around the time Nicholas first fell out a window. The irony is impossible to ignore. The town's youngest residents demonstrate ethical consistency, invoke reason, and take responsibility for their actions. Meanwhile, the adults forge documents, stage assaults, fake deaths, abandon medical victims, and sabotage mayoral races. The writers seem unaware that they've constructed a narrative where the children function as moral compasses, while the grown-ups behave like caffeinated raccoons, rummaging through emotional dumpsters. It is both amusing and tragic. Dalton's looming downfall has become a spectator sport. Between Sidwell's ominous warnings and Dalton's inability to read the room or the danger, his fate feels sealed. If Sidwell doesn't handle him, Sonny will. And if Sonny doesn't, Jason will. Port Charles has a hierarchy of problem solvers, all of whom rank above the police department, which spends most of its time expressing shock at the consequences of its own incompetence. Dalton's decision to drag Rocco into the mayoral debate only solidified his status as an antagonist with a flair for stupidity. Even villainy in Port Charles used to involve finesse. Helena Cassadine orchestrated global plots with elegance, Faison stalked with artistry, and Faith Rosco delivered death threats with seductive precision. Dalton, by comparison, snatches children and runs through public spaces like an amateur. The real fallout will begin once Emma speaks up about Britt's presence in the lab. The revelation of Britt's participation in Dalton's secretive project will set off a chain reaction culminating in her disappearance and Jason's inevitable involvement. If the show intends to escalate, this plotline may finally provide the energy the Drew scandal has been failing to produce. Few storylines have exhausted the collective patience of Port Charles, quite like the ongoing spiral involving Willow, Michael, and Nina. Every character in this triangle has legitimate reasons for resentment, but the writing insists on recycling the same grievances season after season, ad infinitum. Michael wants to protect the children, protect Jacinda, protect his pride, though not necessarily in that order. Willow wants absolution without accountability. Nina wants access to her grandchildren, while ignoring the inconvenient detail that her daughter is unraveling faster than the town's legal system. The latest twist, Willow's potential mental break, only magnifies the dysfunction. If she did shoot Drew during a dissociative episode, the entire narrative shifts from melodrama to tragedy. Michael may protect her, condemn her, or collapse under the truth. But no outcome restores the years lost to this cyclical storyline. Nina, in the meantime, remains an expert in denial, convinced she can will her daughter into emotional stability with maternal hope and frequent visits. Port Charles has never thrived on realism, but Nina's optimism may represent the most unrealistic plotline in the entire show. Faith Roscoe's name inevitably resurrects memories of Port Charles' golden age of villainy, a time when antagonists were allowed to be deliciously evil without devolving into caricature. Her demise felt definitive, logical, and narratively satisfying, a rarity in a town that treats death like a scheduling conflict. The idea of recasting Faith with a glamorous, forceful presence is tempting. Eileen Davidson, with her impeccable delivery and commanding screen presence, could absolutely embody the role. But Port Charles already has Ava, Selena, Alexis, and numerous others occupying the diva space. Introducing yet another powerful blonde into the mix risks overcrowding an already saturated demographic. And the truth is, some characters should remain dead. Faith, like Lisa Niles and Manny Ruiz, embodied a certain dangerous charm that works precisely because it had an ending. The more the show resurrects its rogues, the more it dilutes its own history. As entertaining as necromancy is in this town, it becomes self-parody when overused. After dissecting every thread woven through this sprawling narrative tapestry, one unifying theme emerges. Port Charles is held together by sheer narrative determination. Logic, continuity, and consistency make cameo appearances, but never stay long enough to get comfortable. The city runs on secrets, alliances, half-truths, and the gravitational pull of Sonny Corinthos' dimples. Characters vanish without explanation. Legal consequences evaporate. Babies appear. DNA results shift according to storyline need. Moral compasses spin uncontrollably. Villains transform into victims, victims into villains, and heroes into men wearing the same blue suit for months. Yet for all its chaos, Port Charles remains irresistibly watchable. Its absurdity is its charm. Its melodrama is its engine. Its characters, deeply flawed, frequently misguided, and spectacularly entertaining, anchor a narrative universe that refuses to apologize for its excess. The saga of Drew's shooting, Willow's unraveling, Michael's moral contortions, Jacinda'S secrets, Dalton's imminent demise, Britt's resurgence, the ghost of Faith Rosco, and the vanishing men of Port Charles all converge into a single truth. This show is a beautiful disaster. Port Charles is a place where children save the day, adults sabotage themselves, hospitals function as emotional battlegrounds, and every character is one bad decision away from becoming the town's next headline. It is messy, illogical, maddening, and yet impossible to quit. Because beneath the chaos lies a strange sort of genius. The writers understand that viewers don't just want stories, they want spectacles, emotional carnage, implausible twists, legendary confrontations, and perhaps, occasionally, a plot that actually makes sense. Until then, the residents of Port Charles will continue wandering into danger, talking in circles, marrying for courtroom advantages, mistaking villains for lovers, and forgetting their own relatives. And viewers will watch in frustration, in fascination, and in absolute loyalty. It was a first day as police commissioner to remember. Dante thought he got off easy during his first day as police commissioner, until Rocco wound up arrested during the November 13, 2025 episode of General Hospital. After Dalton dragged Rocco into the debate, claiming the teen had broken into his lab, Laura did everything she could to convince Dalton not to have her grandson arrested. But as soon as her mayoral competition, Ezra inserted himself into the situation, he and Dalton saw to it that Rocco was arrested right in front of her. While Danny sought help from Jason and Alexis, Charlotte informed Lulu and Dante about what happened, which led to Gio and Emma going to Sunny for help. With half the town involved in trying to help the kids, it was Britt who may have actually saved the day when she asked Sidwell to make sure Dalton dropped the charges against her son. The moment Rocco was brought into the PCPD in handcuffs, Dante was forced to take his dad hat off and put his police commissioner hat on as he figured out what to do with his son. He ultimately let Rocco go, but informed him that he needed to be present at an arraignment the following morning. Despite Sidwell's orders to let what happened with Rocco go, Dalton revealed he was determined to see Rocco pay for breaking into his lab after the way Laura humiliated him. Defying Sidwell's orders is never a good idea, and Dalton may be about to learn that the hard way. General Hospital spoilers for November 14th. Tease Sidwell will take his mind off the drama with a visit to Ava. They've already bonded over their shared enemy, Sunny, and now he's about to turn on the charm. The younger stars on GH are killing the game. General Hospital has found pure gold with the teen scene of Rocco, Danny, and Charlotte. Other soaps should take note of what is happening on the ABC soap because fans are loving it. Soaps used to have mad respect for the teen scene. In fact, soaps would build their whole summer around teens, which was how Laura Lee Bell was cast on her parents' show, The Young and the Restless. GH is going back to that train of thought, and it's paying off in droves for the ABC soaps teen scene. Charlotte, Rocco, and Danny are the best thing to happen to the teen scene on soaps in a long time. The dynamic between the characters and actors is impressive. Seriously, these young stars are on fire and can handle their own in scenes with soap vets like Steve Burton and Jeannie Francis. These kids can also lead their own storyline with a little help from Braden Brunier and Jew. The whole trying to bust Dalton for animal testing is a believable thing that teens and young adults would do. Unlike other soaps that focus on romance, or love triangles, or in Days of Our Lives cast a teen pregnancy without a lot of reality, GH is writing their teens in real stories that aren't about young love. The ABC soap has proven that teens are valuable if written correctly, which involves using the family legacy of characters like Charlotte, Danny, and Rocco, who have deep ties to Port Charles. Throwing in the sibling dynamics between Danny and Rocco and Charlotte is the icing on the cake. It's been a while since teens have been this interesting. Days fell short with their latest teen scene by focusing on Holly and Tate. Y&R hasn't even had a legit teen scene in years, and neither has The Bold and the Beautiful, which is focused on young adults, not teens. GH fans are in agreement that Danny, Charlotte, and Rocco are the ones to watch on the show. Charlotte is the brains of the group, Danny is the enforcer, Rocco is the heart. I freaking love this group of teens, wrote a fan on X. There was a fan who responded to that X to say, I haven't felt this way about a group of teens since the Liz, Emily, Nicholas, and Lucky. Another fan shared on X, another generation of teens working together. I love it. And you can't beat Jason and Sam's son, Valentine and Lulu's daughter, and Dante, and Lulu's son, Danny, Charlotte, and Rocco. I'm here for it. My favorite thing on Hatch GH these days is the sibling dynamics. Rocco and Danny, Danny and Scout, Rocco and Charlotte, etc., etc. It's really beautiful to see the young cast exemplifying the future of the show, stated a fan. One fan declared, TPTB struck gold with Bluesy, Asher, and Finn Charlotte. Danny and Rocco are the best young trio in daytime. General Hospital adds emotional depth to Michael and Jacinda'S storyline as their lives start to overlap in meaningful ways. There are moments on General Hospital when you can almost hear the writers grin through the script. The little sideways turns where a story that should have been a one-off complication suddenly finds a pulse. Michael and Jacinda fall right into that pocket. On paper, they're a transactional mess. He pays her to cover an alibi. She's already knee-deep in Port Charles chaos after helping Nina and Portia dose Drew with ketamine. Nothing about that setup screams romance. Yet here we are, watching them circle each other like two people who didn't expect to share a frame and can't quite walk away from it. If Michael and Jacinda'S dynamic feels familiar, that's because the story is leaning into a Pretty Woman twist. The glossy fantasy of two damaged people stumbling into something they didn't expect. Romantically, Michael's been through the ringer. Many of his past girlfriends met tragic endings. His most recent disaster was when his wife, Willow, cheated on him with his slimy uncle, Drew. Michael has built this rhythm where he pours himself into being the responsible one, the father, the businessman, the moral line drawer, but behind all that clean discipline sits this exhausted heart that keeps choosing women who make his life harder. The man is a magnet for chaos that's wearing lip gloss. Jacinda is chaos in a slightly different key. She's sharp, defensive, and quicker to pivot than anyone gives her credit for, but she's also surviving. That's the thing that feels real about her. She's not a mystery princess waiting for the right man to buy her freedom. She's someone who's learned to read a room faster than most people can blink, and right now, Michael is the room she's trying to decode. And that's where the Pretty Woman shadow starts to stretch a little longer. Jacinda isn't walking the streets of Hollywood Boulevard, but her past isn't some soft-focus footnote either. She was a sex worker trying to stay afloat in a city that chews people up faster than it forgives them. Now, she's sitting behind Nina's desk with an actual paycheck, a job that doesn't require survival math, and the one person who opened that door for her happens to be Michael. It's not a rescue so much as a pivot, the kind of quiet turning point where a woman who's only ever been used starts to wonder what it feels like to be trusted. And Michael, for all his polished edges and quartermain armor, seems almost startled by how naturally he stepped into that role. The pretty woman vibe isn't in the romance, not yet, but in the way power shifts when someone finally gets the chance to choose who they want to be next. In Port Charles terms, that's practically a love story in slow motion. If GH leans into it, the pretty woman parallel won't be about Michael rescuing Jacinda. It'll be about two people who've both been dinged up by life, realizing they might function better together than apart. Not a fairy tale, not a makeover montage, just two broken rhythms finding an offbeat that matches. Tempers flare, secrets slip, and charm turns dangerous in Port Charles. The General Hospital spoilers for Friday, November 14th reveal that Trina and Jordan clash, while Sidwell turns on the charm with Ava. Plus, Carly is in for a shock. In a move that should not surprise anyone, Trina clashes with Jordan. Yes, the college student is grown, but part of her still wants her parents to be together. After all, they haven't been reunited for that long in the grand scheme of things, and now she sees their marriage in disrepair. In fact, Portia and Curtis are headed for a divorce, and Trina knows that her mom partially blames Jordan for this development. Trina already cornered Jordan at the Brown Dog, where she politely asked her dad's ex-wife to back off. Well, something tells us that the tone of this next interaction won't be so calm and collected. At least not on Trina's part. What will she have to say to Jordan this time? Note to Jordan: please keep Portia's pregnancy to yourself this time, okay? Meanwhile, Ava and Sidwell are beginning to form a connection. Ava has already impressed Sidwell, and we all know that she loves men who are dangerous. Look for Sidwell to turn on the charm with Ava. Is this all genuine on his part, or does he simply want to get close to Ava for her extensive knowledge of Sunny Corinthos? Maybe Sidwell realizes that Ava could be very valuable in his plans to take down his rival. Speaking of Sunny, lately, he has been spending time with Port Charles ADA Justine Turner. He has even cooked for the woman. He has also tried to manipulate her into looking at anyone but Michael when it comes to the Drew Kane shooting investigation, although he did apologize for that. Needless to say, Sunny and Justine are growing closer. She has shown up at his house looking for help with her car. They have thrown axes together. And of course, there was that time Justine overheard Drew threaten Sunny in his own home. The sharp attorney seems to think she can get close to the coffee importer, and he will let down his guard long enough to incriminate himself. Unfortunately for Justine, her plan suddenly unravels. Is that because she's getting too close to the Dapper Don? Weekly teasers reveal that Carly is in for a shock, and Britt's fears are confirmed. This may be related to the recent break-in at the lab. If it is, Britt probably has opinions on what happened. Like Rocco stole her key to sneak his way in. While Rocco, Charlotte, Nina, Cecilia, and Danny teamed up to break in and break the law, Rocco took one for the team so Danny and Charlotte could escape without getting caught. Britt's a smart woman. She dug through her purse, so she probably knows that her key fob is gone and that Rocco snagged it. Will she help him get out of this tight spot? Or will she stand back and let the boy she birthed rack up a police record? GH is taking Chase down a route that isn't on par with the character. General Hospital is going down a dangerous path with Chase. The current storyline isn't typical of who he is, and if it continues, there may be no way to redeem him. GH has viewers questioning what is happening with Chase. It's obvious he has a savior complex, but after all the time they spent putting him with Brooke Lynn, the direction he's headed seems too far out of character. Willow has been important to him, but it seems more like there is a more than friendship vibe happening. He has taken to being her savior, despite the potential consequences for his job or marriage. During a recent episode of GH, Chase was visiting Willow at Pentonville. The two were getting close, and their hands were locked. Alexis had to call him out on it. Being affectionate with Willow seems to be a comfortable spot for Chase, but Brooke Lynn may object. Meanwhile, Chase is busy working to clear Willow of the crime of shooting Drew. Viewers don't know who did it yet either. However, Michael is the prime suspect, and it's clear that despite Chase's friendship with him, he believes that may be the case. Since Willow's decline into a version of insanity that began with her messing with Sasha and Michael's baby, she is like a deer caught in headlights. Chase has taken up the job as her protector, knowing that Drew has been manipulating her. None of this has been typical of who Chase has been since arriving on the scene. Sure, he's been incredibly lovely, but being secretive, especially where his wife is concerned, isn't something anyone expected. He's always been on the up and up, even putting his foot down with his big brother Finn. It is unclear where the storyline is headed, especially as Willow's adoration for Chase is growing. She knows that he is working to free her and has been by her side nearly the whole time. Since this isn't typically Chase's style, it may be challenging to redeem him, especially if he crosses the line while married to Brooklyn. The couple experienced stress after he learned she had given birth as a teenager, and Dante is the father. If it continues, this could also be the beginning of the end for Chase. Without his dad and brother in Port Charles, Brooklyn is his only genuine connection, and he could blow that. The good cop is stepping out of line, and the risk is much bigger than the reward. General Hospital recaps for Thursday, November 13th, reveal Rocco Falconeri was arrested, while newly reinstated Detective Nathan West got acquainted with Detective Harrison Chase. Also, Rick Lansing made a peace offer to Sonny Corinthos and Gio Palmieri, and Emma Scorpio Drake went to Sonny for help. Laura's nightmare. Laura is blindsided when Professor Dalton drags Rocco into the mayoral debate and demands his arrest, forcing her to choose family over politics. Rick's risky peace offering. Rick approaches Sonny with a shocking proposal to become his lawyer and make amends, leaving Sonny torn between skepticism and hope. Britt's panic grows. As Britt realizes her missing key fob caused the lab break-in, she scrambles to contain the fallout, while Gio and Emma turn to Sonny for help. Professor Henry Dalton stormed into the hall where the mayoral debate was happening, gripping Rocco by the back of his jacket, and demanded that campus security take the teen into custody. Read this. Check out what happened on last episode of GH. Laura Spencer criticized the professor for touching her grandson, then told Rocco to stay quiet when he attempted to explain what occurred. Enjoying the chaos, Ezra Boyle went to get the police, while Laura debated with Dalton about whether Rocco had truly broken into the lab, which needed a key fob for entry. Later, when Boyle returned with campus security, the mayor accused the professor of overreacting. Laura said she would overlook his physical assault on a minor if he dropped the matter. Ezra proposed that the officers check Rocco for the key fob, and the teen nervously handed over the device. Then, Ezra inquired if Dalton's research was hazardous. The professor stated that he dealt with unstable materials, and Ezra claimed Rocco might have endangered the whole campus. Consequently, the campus police arrested the frightened teen. Laura vowed to accompany Rocco to the station, but Ezra attempted to prevent her since they were already late for the debate. Annoyed, she instructed him to inform their constituents that she had a family emergency and walked away. At Bobby's, Britt went into a panic when Charlotte Cassadine and Danny Morgan showed up with bad news. They told her and Jason Morgan that Rocco had been apprehended by Dalton after the three of them had unlawfully entered the lab. Once Britt managed to regain her composure, she kindly offered to give Charlotte a ride to the hospital so that she could personally inform Lulu about Rocco's predicament. After Britt and Charlotte departed, Danny took the opportunity to share the entire ordeal with his father. But he cleverly dodged the question when Jason inquired about who had initially conceived the idea. Dante Falconeri arrived at GH to check on Olivia and Ned Quartermain. Lulu Spencer told him he had just missed Chase, who had gone to work. Seeing Gio and Emma, Dante thanked his son for doing CPR on Ned and expressed pride in Gio for staying calm. Dante advised Lulu to go to the university to watch her mom's debate, but she wanted to stay at the hospital and looked for the debate online. Meanwhile, Emma and Gio walked down the corridor, and he lamented that he had completely forgotten about their plan to sneak into the lab. Emma mentioned that she had ended things with Charlotte, since his grandfather's health was more important than breaking into Dalton's lab. Arriving at the hospital with Britt, Charlotte hurried out of the elevator and informed her parents that Rocco was in trouble. This caught the attention of Gio and Emma, who returned to the sitting area as Charlotte explained that Rocco might be getting arrested. At the same time, Britt made a phone call, asking the other person to meet her at the hospital right away. And Emma told Gio she felt responsible for Rocco getting caught, since she had involved them all in her fight against Dalton, crying if Anna Devane were in town, she would ensure Rocco wasn't punished. But Gio knew someone to turn to. In the exam room, Britt emptied her purse looking for her key fob. She remembered asking Charlotte, Danny, and Rocco to find her bag at Bobby's earlier. Jens Sidwell came in, and Britt told him about the lab break-in, urging him to get Dalton to stop Rocco's arrest. When Sidwell asked how a child accessed the lab, Britt didn't mention her missing key fob as she packed her things. Instead, she suggested Sidwell should control Dalton and asked him, as a longtime loyal member of the project, to resolve the issue. On his first day back at the PCPD, Nathan sat at his old desk, now belonging to his new partner, Chase. As they got acquainted, Nathan expressed his happiness to return. Even though his former partner was now his boss, Chase reassured Nathan about his memory loss, trusting Dante and Anna's judgment. He updated Nathan on the PCPD's major case, Judge Eva Heron's murder. They noted the conflict of interest since Heron had denied visitation to Willow Tate, Chase's ex-wife and Nathan's niece. Chase mentioned the lack of evidence as the body was found in the water. Their chat was interrupted when Dante, Lulu, and Charlotte arrived looking for Rocco. Chase was unaware that Rocco had been arrested soon after. Rocco and Laura showed up with 2 PCU campus police officers, and Dante and Lulu were upset to see Rocco in handcuffs. Rocco tried to explain to Dante, but Dante interrupted and asked Nathan to take Rocco to the interrogation room. Dante let Lulu go with their son since he was a minor and thanked Laura for bringing Rocco to the PCPD. When Dante asked about Dalton, the PCU officer said they had taken the professor's statement, but he wanted to return to his lab. Dante requested a written report to review and sighed to Laura about the unexpected events on his first day as commissioner. He asked Laura to update him on what happened at the college. The mayor was surprised to hear from Dante that Danny and Charlotte were also involved in the incident. Dante worried this would affect Laura's re-election campaign, but she dismissed it, saying she almost got Dalton to drop the matter before Boyle intervened. Charlotte observed through the interrogation room window as a remorseful Rocco described the situation with his mother. Lulu scolded Rocco, pointing out that his father was the police commissioner and his grandmother was the mayor, meaning his actions affected them both. Dante was angry, she said, but they mainly wanted to keep him out of jail. When Britt arrived at the station to check on Rocco, Nathan told his sister to go because the teen had parents to care for him. Thinking the charge would be a misdemeanor, Dante asked Chase to bring Rocco out. As Nathan and Britt watched, Dante told Rocco he was being released. But he had to go to court the next morning. Rocco tried to apologize again and got upset when his father interrupted him and walked away. Lulu comforted her son, saying Dante had to be the police commissioner, not Dad, and they would eventually get through this. As Lulu departed from the station alongside her mother and children, she was taken aback to find Britt waiting for her. Britt expressed her desire to check on Rocco, to which Lulu retorted that it was not Britt's concern, assuring her that everything would turn out all right. Britt nodded in understanding, indicating that she was confident it would. Once Lulu's family had left, Dante engaged in conversation with Chase and Nathan in the interrogation room. During their discussion, Nathan highlighted the fortunate fact that there was no damage to the lab, suggesting that Rocco would probably only face a misdemeanor charge. At Miller and Davis, Alexis Davis was happy to hear that Molly Lansing Davis was no longer on Willow's case, so they wouldn't clash in court. Molly thought acting district attorney Justine Turner didn't want her as second chair because she wanted the spotlight for the high-profile case. She shared that she was enjoying a peaceful life after a tough year. Molly laughed that even Alexis and Rick were getting along. Alexis gently asked if Rick still had anger from his experience in the woods. Surprised that Rick's priorities seemed to have changed after his digital detox, Molly joked that the bad experience with those crazy people might have been good for her dad. Alexis, offering a half smile, felt more uncomfortable with the conversation since it was all a lie, prompting Molly to notice her strange behavior. To cover up, Alexis said she was happy Molly was with her dad and didn't want her to be let down by him. After Molly left, Jason and Danny came to Alexis for help with Rocco. Danny thought turning himself in might help Rocco, but Alexis warned it would only get them both in trouble and give Drew Kane a reason to imprison Danny. Danny didn't want Rocco to suffer alone, but Jason felt Danny should honor Rocco's choice to protect him and Charlotte, then suggested Danny could do something and asked where the teens got the key fob. Rick went to see his brother to propose being Sonny's lawyer for Measure C. Sonny declined, saying he preferred his current attorney, Diane Miller, and joked he'd trust the Grim Reaper over Rick. Rick, not giving up, argued that Diane was biased because of her ties to Alexis, who wanted nothing to do with Sonny's businesses, and pointed out that Sidwell's son, Marco Rios, worked at her firm. Sonny firmly stated that none of them had betrayed him like Rick had before. Rick claimed he didn't want his issues with Sonny to affect their daughters, Molly and Christina Corinthos Davis. Sonny was skeptical, recalling how he had tried to reconcile with Rick many times. Rick said his recent life changes gave him a new outlook and that he could challenge eminent domain so Sonny could keep his peers. He offered to help with other legal matters if he succeeded, but even if it was just a one-time job, he wanted to move on for their late mother's sake. Rick asked Sonny to consider it and left, leaving Sonny conflicted about trusting his brother and making amends. Sonny had a lot to think about and consider. Later, Sonny was visited by Gio and Emma, who needed help with Rocco. Emma shared her past with Dalton from her old school and how she followed him to Port Charles. When she tried to take all the blame for the lab break-in, Gio told his grandfather they were in it together. Sonny warned them not to go to the police since they were adults, unlike Rocco, and told them to let the lawyers deal with it. After departing from Sonny's, Rick made his way to Bobby's, where he encountered Molly, who was diligently focused on her writing project. She expressed her satisfaction with the advancements she had made, especially after grappling with a challenging beginning. Molly shared how Cody Bell's act of saving Rick motivated her to alter the protagonist of her narrative, which ultimately led to a seamless flow of ideas coming together. It was then that Rick received a phone call from Sonny. Standing alongside Gio and Emma, Sonny presented Rick with an opportunity to demonstrate his capabilities. After Britt convinced Sidwell to rein Dalton in, he tried to get Dalton to back off of Rocco. Summoning Dalton to the hospital, Sidwell firmly reprimanded the professor for coming perilously close to revealing their confidential project. Dalton, in a fit of anger, vowed that Rocco would face consequences for his actions, but Sidwell insisted that he let it go to prevent any police scrutiny from being directed toward the lab. However, Dalton, feeling proud and defiant, refused to back down, declaring that after the humiliation he suffered at the hands of the mayor, he was determined to ensure that her grandson would suffer consequences as well. Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to check back with Celebrating the Soaps for all the latest General Hospital spoilers, news, rumors, comings and goings, and updates. General Hospital spoilers and updates suggest that Willow Tate might come to the conclusion that she wants Jacinda Bracken out of the picture for good. Is Michael Corinthos' new girlfriend about to find herself in serious peril, with Willow wanting to eliminate her competition? Jacinda has consented to pretend to be in a relationship with Michael to support his alibi, but it's becoming increasingly evident that genuine emotions are blossoming between them. If this trend continues, Jacinda could very well transition from being merely Michael's faux girlfriend to his actual partner. Naturally, Willow felt quite disturbed when she spotted Michael enjoying the company of Jacinda and Wiley Corinthos at the Metro Court Gardens. The trio appeared almost like a cheerful little family, which may lead Willow to fear that she is being supplanted. Willow is fully aware that Michael is utilizing Jacinda as a cover for his alibi, and clearly does not want her around Wiley or Amelia Corinthos. Nevertheless, Michael holds full custody and possesses the authority to determine who is allowed to spend time with his children. Should Willow eventually perceive that the relationship between Michael and Jacinda is becoming serious, it could leave her feeling even more anxious. Willow has demonstrated that she can become somewhat unstable when situations do not unfold in her favor. Fans of GH will certainly remember how Willow stalked Daisy Gilmore and caused such distress to Sasha Gilmore Corbin that she felt compelled to leave town. Jason Morgan took them overseas. There's even a possibility that Willow may have actually shot Drew Kane, despite her firm claims of innocence regarding the incident. Michael might have a valid point regarding the potential threat posed by Willow, which raises the question, could Jacinda also be in jeopardy? There exists a possibility that Jacinda could find herself on Willow's radar as the next target, leading Willow to contemplate ways to eliminate her eventually. This could involve devising a strategy to force Jacinda out of Port Charles, or, in a more sinister turn of events, resorting to lethal measures against her. According to the latest spoilers from General Hospital, Willow's impending release could usher in a wave of complications, so be sure to keep an eye out for any alarming developments that may arise. General Hospital spoilers and updates for Friday, November 14th. Tease Carly Spencers is shocked, while Trina Robinson delivers a threat. Also, Stella Henry is joyful when she hears Curtis Ashford's news. At Bobby's, Carly is shocked when she hears her brother, Lucas Jones' news. Her response to Lucas telling her he's moving into Windermere Castle with Marco Rios is negative, to say the least. She's not only shocked, but she's also livid as she tells Lucas, "That's not happening." Carly obviously can see no good coming out of this, no good whatsoever. The fact that Marco's father is one of Sonny Corinthos' enemies and on the WSB hit list doesn't help. Dante Falconeri found himself in an unenviable position with his son Rocco Falconeri being arrested for breaking and entering on his first day as commissioner. He and his former mother-in-law, Laura Collins, discuss Rocco and his unfortunate situation at the courthouse, where Rocco must appear at 8 a.m. Dante tells Laura, obviously talking about Rocco, he should be leaving this courthouse and not coming back. Dante and Laura would agree on that. They never want to see Rocco in legal trouble again. In the meantime, Acting District Attorney Justine E. Turner's plan unravels as Rick Lansing tells her, that should tell you how determined he is to win. Rick just took a job for Sonny Corinthos to prove his brotherly love. Gio Palmieri and Emma Scorpio Drake wanted to do something to keep Rocco from facing charges. They both felt responsible for Rocco being in trouble since they didn't go break in Professor Henry Dalton's lab themselves. But as far as Rick's conversation with Justine, are they talking about Sonny or talking about Gio or Rocco? In the meantime, Lulu Spencer is talking to Sonny, asking, where did that idea even come from? No doubt she's talking about the break-in, even though she knows it was about rescuing lab animals. Sonny will explain things the best he can, going by what Gio and Emma told him about the lab break-in. Lulu may understand about what Rocco thought he was doing, but the fact is, the kids broke into a secure lab with possibly very dangerous outcomes. It was assumed that Dalton must have moved all the lab animals since what Emma had seen in the school in California. Elsewhere, Trina delivers a threat to Jordan Ashford concerning her father, Curtis. She confronts Jordan and tells her she will make sure he never goes back to her. Curtis and Trina's mother, Portia Robinson, are in the midst of divorce, and Trina doesn't yet know that Portia's expecting a baby. Regardless, Curtis has plans to divorce Portia anyway, because the marriage is over and dead. Trust has already been broken way too many times between the couple to begin with. In the meantime, Stella is joyful, finding out that Curtis is going to be a father again. She is smiling and excited as she tells him a baby changes everything. Viewers know that Portia is in the midst of a who's the daddy situation, and Curtis wasn't supposed to find out. The truth of the matter is, finding out who the father of the baby is will likely change everything. Whether it is Curtis or it's Isaiah Gannon who's the father, they'll both have to be told eventually. Be sure to catch up on everything happening with GH right now. Come back here often for General Hospital spoilers, news, and updates. Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to check back with Soap Opera Spy for all the latest General Hospital spoilers, news, rumors, comings and goings, and updates.